Today on Locked on Rockies, a listener said if I had the power to turn the Rockies around in 3 years, how would I do it? Plus, the playoff format, it's a good thing for Rockies fans.
You are Locked on Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked on Rockies podcast for today, the first day of October in the year 2024. I am your host of the Locked on Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk, as I have for now 3 seasons and change now, and been following this team my entire life. If there's one thing to know about me, that I love Rockies baseball through the thick and the thin. That's why I do this show. That's why I'm here. That's why we chat Rockies baseball, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked on Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show like very many of you are, because we're going to be going through some listener comments today, and I'm going to be putting out the call for help to you, the Rockies fans, this offseason. I'll be diving into that more here later in the show, but basically, long story short is I want to know what you want to hear this offseason. What are the questions do you have? What should I be asking the guests that I bring on the show? What's on your mind that you want to figure out what's on my mind? It helps me with the show, and I can keep us rolling here as the Rockies are facing an offseason in which they really have multiple directions that they can go. Really, there's two, because there's change, and then there's status quo. And are we really confident that this team is going to be better than the status quo? We'll see. We're going to dive into that and more, including the playoff format, why it's a win for Rockies fans here on today's episode of Locked on Rockies. Before we do, this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Okay, so I wanted to go through some listener comments here from the end of the season there, the recap episode. And let's see here. We're going to start with Reaper. He says, maybe new manager, need younger blood. The talent on the roster is there. Go Rockies 2025. This team's got a solid foundation in some areas. This team certainly has a situation where you're feeling confident with some players. I think one thing that is important, like if Nolan Jones bounces back and him finishing the season on a 7-game hitting streak with some of his best at-bats of the season there at the end is a good sign. If he can bounce back and be a 2020 guy somewhere, maybe again, someone that contributes at the rate that he did, the Rockies are going to be a better offense. If the Rockies can get a healthy Chris Bryant, we've now asked that for 3 seasons and stuff, so I'm not necessarily going to put some faith there. And he can, maybe it's not going to be home runs, but if he can start being a double hitter or just good clutch hitting, good at getting on base, that'll benefit the Rockies. And I think Michael Toglia is the next candidate primed to take a next step. I think one of the best moves, and I think embracing Michael Toglia was one of the best things the Rockies did this season. Letting him just play and play and play, get the reps, go through it. And we're sitting with Toglia here. I know center field is a lot different than first base. I understand that, but I don't undervalue first base defense. I think it's silly to sit there and think that if you're not good at first base defense or being great at first base defense, that's not an actual plus or whatever. That seems silly to me. Michael Toglia makes plays. Michael Toglia robs runs. We're seeing a little bit of that. If Michael Toglia can be a average hitter with that hidden pop ability, he's going to benefit playing at Coors Field. He's going to be a benefit for this Rockies team. He is primed to take a nice step forward. Got to hope that it happens again, and I don't think it's going to happen at the Doyle rate. But, just think about it, though. Kind of a similar story, right? The defense is there. You see the pops of it. You see the flashes of it. You see the intrigue of it. It'd be really interesting to see what type of impact a step forward Toglia will have in the offseason. But the manager question is an interesting one. As we mentioned, is it going to be status quo, business as usual for the Colorado Rockies and say that they just need to play better and they like what they got and yada, yada, yada? Or is this a team that's going to make changes in a season that of possible change that has been kickstarted by a 14-year veteran retiring? It's an interesting one. Ohio Rocks says, was a difficult year for the Rockies. Thank you for the content, and I hope for a better year in 25. That being said, I fear that management will do very little to rectify the situation. I see more status quo and less shaking up the roster/staff ahead for the Rockies. There you go. There's one Rockies fan's take on it. Michael Disney says, strapping up for another offseason with talk of potential and hope things go our way. Thanks for another season covering my favorite professional team. You guys are both welcome for the content. Do it for the fans there. Lux Ace, big-time Charlie Blackman fan, says, I was at the game yesterday. The pregame ceremony was really cool, and seeing Charlie play the outfield for the final time was really cool. Wish Charlie got to play a little longer, but I could see why Black pulled him so his final AB would be a hit. I do want to say when the announcer mentioned Dick Monfort, the whole stadium just booed him. A couple extra not too kind words for Dick Monfort there from Lux Ace. But he says, wish the best for Charlie moving forward. And also got a signed bat by Zeke when he was at the game. So that was cool. Well, congratulations. That is very cool. Another thing, Ezekiel Tovar is going to settle in nicely to that face of the franchise. I mean, things to be excited about. He is at the top of the list there easily. But I want to go to one more comment here. And this is from Jay here. I love all your questions, and I was asking questions like I was asking there of what will the Rockies actually do? Will the Rockies actually make changes? Will they embrace things? What does back-to-back 100-loss seasons actually mean to the Colorado Rockies and Colorado Rockies ownership? This is uncharted territory. Remember, 30 years without a 100-loss season. Now back-to-back 100-loss seasons. That's a problem. And it's not a situation in which other teams would reward. Look at the Giants making the big move. I mean, look at the Giants. That's a massive change for the Giants. And they're embracing a guy to be president of baseball operations that doesn't have a lot of front office. I mean, I don't think Buster Posey's done anything in the front office since he's retired. He's only been off the field for a handful of years. Look at that thought process. Look at that move compared to what the Rockies have done. What results and front office folks have been rewarded with poor performance. I mean, the Giants made a move from a successful guy and are now taking a total risk on a guy that doesn't have a lot of front office. Can you confidently say that you think the Rockies would do even something remotely close to similar as that? I don't think so. Let's get to Jay's the rest of Jay's question here. Now, if the Rockies would give you the job to fix all the issues what would you do for the next 3-year plan? So it's tough here because I'm not, playing fantasy GM is one thing. The realities of baseball are a lot different. But I think what I start with, and the first move that I do make, and this isn't as a disrespect thing to Bud Black, but I move on. I move on from Bud Black, and I start looking for a Skip Schumacher. I start looking for younger guy that, or maybe within the organization. Look at the success that the Rockies have had in their farm system, and look at the changes that have been made in the farm system of late. If you're going to be loyal and look only within your organization, why not look for the successful parts? Why not look for the guys that have been working with these guys in the past that have already have a relationship with your roster? If you're going to stick to your roster, if you're going to buy into this roster that you already have, Why not work and you want to be your stick from within type of self and stick to that plan? Why not actually look to your within the organization there? But I would just, and if you're not going to move on from the manager, if you believe that Bud Black, at least for one more season, is the right guy to help get this team back into the window, work with the pitching staff, use that pitching minded guy. If I'm the GM and Dick says, nah, you can't move on from Bud Black, I say, okay, but we overhaul completely how we look at analytics. And Bud Black and his coaching staff must do more. And I'm just making a guess here, just because of an assumption of one of the longest tenured coaches or managers in the game. I believe he's like second longest tenured manager in Major League Baseball. Been managing for a while. Been with the same team for a while. Been in the same environment for a while. He's not been part of an organization that fully buys into analytics, that fully invests into it, that really does more. The Rockies need to start looking into the numbers and start being a team that actually plays the modern game. They cannot be a bottom of the barrel of defense and our pitching staff. They cannot be one of the league's worst in strikeouts. They cannot be a team that is at the bottom of so many categories and not get you can't. That's just like it's like squeezing a lemon and trying to get more juice out of it when it's already been completely squeezed dry. You can't there's only so much you can do if you're just going to sit there and not look for creative solutions to avoid this. It has now been 30 plus years of Rockies baseball, pardon me, where the issue has been pitching at altitude. And yet, as other teams build departments of smart people to look at the game in a different way, and I understand that it can't be the only philosophy you have. But the Rockies can't be a team that doesn't have an analytics department. They can't be a team that loses people in that department within a year of hiring them. If the team made me stick with Bud Black, I would say, okay, but you have to do more in your research and development. Like you have to come to me and you have to tell me what you are seeing. That isn't just it's baseball and the pitching is the best we've ever seen and blah, blah, blah. I want detailed reports of what they're seeing then and how their approach is going to fix it. Because again, it's maybe if you believe in the staff, you have to talk about the question of is the staff given enough tools? Is the staff given enough resources to do what they want to do, what they need to do? But if it's me, if I have full control, I'm making big changes there. I'm bringing a new look into the Rockies. Something that Dick Monfort didn't really seem all that interested in the beginning of the year when they talked about the new GM search. And I'm working with Bill Schmidt. At this point, I'm not moving on. And right now, I'm not moving on from Bill Schmidt. I'm working with Bill Schmidt to set up the plan for what his idea is. Who's his guy? What guys? Who are you most encouraged by? And I'm working with him there. And I say, and I tell Bill Schmidt though, I say, if we're not going in our minor league system, I encourage us to go outside. I implore us to bring new life, new looks, new energy into this team. And I'll explain why I want that coming up and my other things in my Rockies 3-year plan coming up next here on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash, which means this is why I enjoy it. It's something where you can just, if you think, man, these players are going to have a big day, if you think you're believing big in the next big offensive explosion for the Denver Broncos. You can pick more or less on all of those categories, and you can buy into a different take on fantasy. On fantasy, you kind of put a little bit more. I feel like sometimes you can kind of put your knowledge and your hot takes to the test a little bit when you on PrizePicks, but you can see for yourself, and you can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. Sign up today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app, the PrizePicks app, and use that code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. You can also find the Locked On MLB podcast for your second listen of the day if you're interested in staying up to date with all things Major League Baseball as it's going through a really fun postseason. We're going to wrap up the show with my thoughts on the postseason format and why that Mets-Braves series there to end. It's just another example of why I think expanded playoffs are more fun and why Rockies fans should be encouraged by that. We'll be coming up and doing that in segment number 3 today, but I wanted to finish up with my 3-year plan there. I started by saying I'm moving on from Bud Black. I am bringing in someone with Bill Schmidt, working with Bill Schmidt to bring in a guy that he likes, and then from there, I'm evaluating pitching, and I start creating a competition in spring training. I go and I say, okay, Kyle Freeland, I am confident is going to be here. And then the rest of the rotation, I say it's time. You need to show, and especially and I think I explore with German Marquez. I would see how his recovery goes through the spring. The two pitchers I would mainly focus on are German Marquez and Kyle Freeland. I also wouldn't be too quick to move on from Ryan Feltner because he had a strong second half and someone that we could add some nice solid back of the rotation depth. If that's going to be your fifth starter, if we get end of the season Ryan Feltner, that's a pretty darn good thing. Ryan Feltner definitely has some intrigue there, enough to raise your eyebrows. But Cal Quantrill, Austin Gomber, Antonio Senzatella, like I create competition and I make it so it's not, I make it uncomfortable. I embrace bringing in free agents on 1-year deals, on minor league deals and saying prove it to me as well. This and I find guys that can strike batters out. I find a guy that can be the John Gray, that can be someone that can go 6 1/3 and get you 7 strikeouts, and that's a consistent day. And through those, and how do I find those guys? I work with that newly revamped analytics department and the staff to find the right guys, to build a different profile, to change the philosophy of only pitch to contact guys. While I don't think that you can go, you need to go completely away from it. Kyle Freeland at his best is when he's inducing weak contact while also being able to throw a little bit of stuff to get some strikeouts. I think that's a good mix-up. But for the Rockies' entire rotation to basically be made up of the same profile, the same guys of roughly the same caliber, it's uninspiring. This rotation has to be addressed, and it has to be. And if you are, you cannot sit here and just say you are fully confident in the guys that you have in the 5-man rotation that you have. Kyle Freeland has been solid and has been a foundation piece for a while in this team and is a guy that can fill your Charlie Blackmon role. German Marquez is still young, and if he can bounce back from the injuries and still show you that he is the flamethrower that you are, he is a guy that you're confident in maintaining. Or you can trade him and he can go off and move on to the second stage of his career at a new place that in a different spot, and you can move on and rebuild from there as you have a Dollander in the mix awaiting. I think that's so. I address the rotation by taking that philosophy, by embracing that. That's how I do it. And then for the offense, if I'm gonna I'm making sensible low year commitment splash deals on veterans outside of the guys, and I'm making tough calls. I'm making a call about Montero. I'm making calls about Goodman. I'm making call. There's some of these guys that you might still need to see more from, but this Rockies team needs somebody that hits 30 plus home runs. This Rockies team needs somebody in the lineup that is going to be a constant power threat. Power hitting needs to come back to the Colorado Rockies. And it could be in a thing where I might explore trades. And again, in terms of things where I have an honest conversation with Brendan Rodgers and Ryan McMahon. Both are great players. Both are high caliber players. Both are all-star caliber players. Both are great. But they're so inconsistent in some points of the season, Ryan McMahon especially, that there needs to be a point where it's like, hey, we need you to be more. Ryan McMahon can't continue to strike out like this. Brendan Rodgers can't start the season batting sub 200. Those guys need to be more consistent. And unfortunately, I have seen enough from those guys to kind of believe that I just don't see them as this big power threat anymore. Like, the Rockies need somebody that is just a huge home run, OBP slugging type of guy that is a big problem at Coors Field. That's what the Rockies DH needs to be. And again, it's in that same vein, you have to navigate the Chris Bryant situation. I really don't. I don't play if I'm in charge too. I don't move Chris. Chris Bryant plays DH, and we give him a shot to stay healthy and to contribute. But he needs to improve that and needs to show that if his whole thing is just hitting, his whole focus is just hitting. If he can be that guy that can actually get that power back and be the guy that is just an offensive threat, that will be a big benefit. But I would target that for the Rockies because I don't think the Rockies have enough power on this team. I like that. I like the fact that the Rockies got a lot of 2020 possible guys. I love the fact that you can build a core of that. I love I love the offensive profiles of Bretton Doyle and Ezekiel Tovar this season, minus the strikeouts and the off-speed pitch stuff. But the Rockies are just missing that, holy cow, this guy's going to come up and hit a bomb. It's the thing playing the Dodgers. There's 5 guys in that lineup that can hit a home run at any point that you feel confident in. It's these other lineups that have guys. It's what's been missing in the post Arenado Story era is guys that can hit 30 home runs. Golly, when they show Nolan's numbers, man, it's like that's why you're reminded why you miss it. But that's what I do there. But for next year, I think the biggest changes I make are organizational wise. I really don't know how many moves you can make outside of rotation moves that you can make this offseason that's going to magically wave a wand for the Rockies to get back into contention, especially because you have a lot of young guys that you do want to see a little bit more of. You do want to see more from this bullpen. You do want to see what happens with some of these guys given consistent playing time. But the shortcomings of the Rockies are just too great for me to actually confidently believe that this team will turn it around. But I believe if you set these changes in motion there, and you allow this team to develop a little bit more, go through another season that's kind of rough in 25, you then are entering a situation in which 26, you'll be probably in a different contract situation with a lot of your pitching staff. You can be looking at a situation where you can bring new pitchers in. And I believe the Rockies need to convince pitchers to come pitch on short-term deals here. And I don't think the Rockies need to overcommit to pitching on long-term deals either. I think the Rockies need to find a happy medium of shorter-term deals with better named pitchers that can adding strikeouts into that roster. I think those areas will help the Rockies improve. I think the Rockies do have a really great center fielder. I think the Rockies got a great shortstop. I think the Rockies have interesting stuff in the wings with other players. But I think the real start to getting the team back in 3 years start within the organization itself. All right, let's take a break and then wrap up with just my quick postseason thoughts and finish this episode of Locked On Rockies. All right, we are brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And guess what? If you've been like, all right, maybe I'm a little hesitant, maybe you want to try it out, maybe you don't want to go too crazy, well, guess what? You can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Yes, that's right. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. You can also get the FanDuel app. Safe, secure, easy to use. FanDuel.com. We are also brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Gametime's got you covered for all the events. It ain't just sports. It's the concerts. It's the comedy. It's everything. And they even got a new feature to help find your next favorite event. Gametime's got the new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I love using Gametime. Super simple, easy to use. And my favorite thing about it, the views from your seats. You're going to know exactly where you're going to sit. And when you toggle in that all-in pricing and clicking that button up at the top, you're going to know exactly what you're going to pay. No hidden fees right there. Everything up front right there. So you know exactly what you're paying for. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We can find your team every day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, you've won the prize. What's the prize? A daily Colorado Rockies podcast called the Locked On Rockies podcast. Thank you so much, again, for making us your first listen of the day. All right. Let's I know that I didn't quite get to the full 3-year plan, but I really do think if you want to see a success in 3 years, the real answer to that question is you have to change within the organization. Philosophies, approach, coaching, analytics, all that stuff. I just feel like the Rockies have not been up to par with the rest of Major League Baseball in terms of that. So those are so hope that kind of answered your question. And please keep sending me questions all off season long. It makes the show so much better when I can interact with you, the fans. So when you have a question, when you want to know more about the Rockies, big or small, let me know and would love to dive into it there with you. What do you want me to ask guests? Who do you want me to bring on and talk about the Rockies here throughout the offseason? Let me know. Hey, just to finish up here, the playoff format is so fun. And I understand expanded playoffs and a lot of teams getting in spoils the experience for some, but I just couldn't disagree more. I think that for Rockies fans, especially for a team that's never won the division, for a team that with such little October baseball experience, I'm so grateful that multiple teams that so many teams get a shot at it. I think that it's more fun. It's way more fun that the last game of the season yesterday had so many implications or whatever, or it was Sunday. So, but actually, no, technically yesterday because of the Braves and the Mets. That's still technically the regular season. So my point is, does it dilute it? I don't know. I haven't really necessarily believed in that. And especially when you were looking at like When you were worried about pay discrepancy and payrolls and stuff, like, holy cow, that's an even bigger deal when it comes to playoffs. And yes, it might mean, of course, it meant more when it was so much more difficult to do. Like, yeah, I get that. Okay. If that's how you grew up watching it and stuff. I mean, I mostly grew up in the wild card era. I mean, wild card has been something I've known basically my entire life, watching sports. And it just makes everything, when there's chaos that's created, when people are talking about all the different scenarios, when so many teams and so many fans are engaged until the literal last pitch of the regular season. That's a good thing. That's a better thing for baseball. That's a win. And for the teams that have the long break, or the teams that have a little extra time off, it's a weak excuse. Everyone talks about rest being a good thing and other stuff, but in baseball, it's too much rest. Gets out of the groove. Be professionals. Handle it when the lights are bright. And for Rockies fans, like, why would you ever want less chances for your team to make the postseason, especially when in its entire existence they've never won the division? Wild card has been the only way for the Rockies to get in there. I don't know, just my thoughts. I didn't see a lot of it. I was just seeing some people talk about it, but there was my thoughts. But folks, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. Check us out on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. Subscribe there. Really helps the show. Really helps the show grow when you do that stuff, and when you support us there. But folks, until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from Locked On Rockies, and also encouraging you to check out Locked On MLB for your second listen of the day. And if you need more Colorado sports coverage, Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and Locked On Buffs, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. We'll catch you on the flippity flip.